There's nothing I love to talk about like I love to talk about creativity, and no other sandwich I would love to talk about it with today than Christy Smith. Welcome to the Mystical Movement Show.
Thank you so much for having me, Natalie.
I am thrilled to have you on today. I'm so excited for this conversation. And let's just start by where the sandwiches came to be. This started about a year ago at Folly Beach. So, could you talk a little bit about Folly Beach and that experience?
I am a human who loves to be at the beach, and one of my favorite weird niche hobbies is um, drawing labyrinths, walking meditations on the beach. And I've designed a lot of patterns over the last couple of years, and I asked a group of people if they would like to come and hang out at the beach with me and draw some labyrinths. And so I think we had done one, and it was close to sunset, and we were getting a little hungry. I think maybe it was a good one. and uh and someone started talking about how we were sandwiches, like we were out there building these amazing portals for people to just step through and experience. uh and then we also decided that we demanded some sacrifices. So the giddiness uh and just joy of building something like that inspired all of us to be sandwiches and to just sort of lean into what it's like to make uh meaningful ritual in public places.
Yes. So could you go into that, please, and talk a little bit more about labyrinths? You could use this as your a way to start to introduce yourself if you want to go through that lens, but a little bit into the backstory and also just the history of labyrinths.
Sure. So first off, a labyrinth is different than a maze. The words are in English used interchangeably, and labyrinths, well, mazes are multicursal, meaning there are many paths and choices. A maze is a puzzle, a place that you can get lost in. A labyrinth is unicursal, meaning there's only one way in and one way out. You might feel like you are lost, but you have been on the right path the entire time. And it's what I really love about labyrinths. I got into them a number of years ago when I was invited to teach a workshop or just like hold space for a group of participants at a weekend workshop. And there was a labyrinth on property. And I just sort of fell down the labyrinth hole, the rabbit hole on these, and just started copying patterns from time during the pandemic. We put one in our front yard. So I'm looking at it right now. My neighborhood uses it. Kids come and run through it. They trick or treat it. And I just gradually just started getting deeper and deeper into them. I'm a certified labyrinth facilitator with Veriditas. And the process of holding space for people as they walk through them is really beautiful. It's such a simple practice. The results are pretty amazing.
Yes, you actually said falling down the labyrinth rabbit hole, which is a neat link to the labyrinth that I chose for our time at Folly Beach, which was the spirit of curiosity. And so you had drawn a pattern that was Alice. And I'll just say from my own experience of walking it in every single labyrinth that I've ever walked, it is exactly like you said, a walking meditation. It's a portal. It's a like this entry into another world almost, or like there you can experience so much, you can feel so much, and being there with you, seeing other people who were just on the beach, some people curious and wanting to check it out and open and willing, and then some people just like nothing had happened, like you didn't even notice that there's like hundreds of feet worth of like carving in the sand, but just going about your run. And that is one response as well, you know? So could you talk about how you make these designs, like Alice, for example, and how
Hmm.
you drew that? Like this is where to me, because I've walked labyrinths at different places, and the way you make labyrinths is so mind-boggling and brilliant and fascinating. So could you talk about just Alice as an example and then maybe a few of the other ones that you've done?
Yeah. So, uh, well, Alice in Wonderland, just the story of that really does speak to me of someone following their curiosity and just maybe getting themselves into bumps and scrapes and joys and revelations and trials, just by following that thread. That particular design, and a lot of the designs that I have done recently, it came from a 15-month program with another group of humans working through Brene Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart, one chapter at a time. And there was a lot of personal processing we each did with those chapters. If you're not familiar with it, it is an incredible, well, Brene Brown aside, like, also rabbit hole. But this book talks about 87 different emotions and experiences, and uses her deep research as a sociologist to like break those apart and get a little bit more nuanced. Something I really want to do is to understand my own emotions and wants and needs more uh, articulately. And so I challenged myself as a part of the processing to draw a labyrinth for each of the 87. So that one was the one for curiosity. And, Natalie, I would be curious about why you chose curiosity, because there were a lot of patterns you could have chosen from.
That's so true. I think it's because of where I was coming through because this was March of last year, and my sister had just gone through a bone marrow transplant. And there's really nothing that makes you face death, like literally 40% chance of survival, like just looking at mortality. So much it really I like feel it in my gut, talking about it, like the place that it takes you to is there's so much just rawness in it. And I feel like it made me go to a whole new place as far as what I wanted out of life. Like whenever you think about death that much, like you're also thinking about life that much, and like, what do I want out of life? And so I was coming into March and like the thought of a new year, and I didn't have like hard and fast goal. Well, I knew I wanted to start a podcast actually. And so it's fun to be here. Hey, doing it, loving it. Christy, a loyal listener. So thank you so much for being here, and just dear friend and all the things. But so coming into the year kind of being like just curious. Yeah, just curious about what coming through that experience and being a caregiver, and just being glad for every single day. I felt like of all of the things, it wasn't like any other. It's interesting that, yeah, like grief wasn't the one I picked or something, but it was really like, I think the place that it took me to was one of questioning. And so curiosity was the draw there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has been so powerful this year too, to approach something like a podcast with just curiosity,
Yeah.
and not doing it with like any of the other intentions that you could have, or like everything. I also got my personal trainer certification last year, and it was just curious, going into a place of learning. And I'm a lifelong learner. I will always be learning. I love learning. I know you as well. Brain the size of a planet. Just want to keep on just consuming, get understanding things. And so that actually leads us into the Enrichment Project, something that I really, really wanted to hear more about. Obviously, I've heard some from you about it, and specifically, like, even to your tattoos, like the way, like the designs, there's something like the almost labyrinth about that, just creativity wise, like as far as like the way that you create. So could you tell us a little bit about the Enrichment Project?
Sure. So the Enrichment Project started in 2011, and I was feeling really creatively stuck. I was very much judging my creativity from that it was more assembly line than anything else. I was doing a lot of dancing at the time. If you'd asked me what I did to relax, I would have said dancing. And really it was like late night to-do list demolitions of like, how do I get ready for a performance, and how do I like groom this choreography so it could be shown on stage. And all around me there were these really accomplished dancers, either in like transnational dance. So the word belly dance comes with a lot of baggage around it, and terms, but that is maybe what a layperson might kind of associate off of the top, but also circus arts and aerial arts. And so I asked a group of women if I could just ask them questions for a year about their creative processes. And I thought, um, well, I probably thought that like at the end of the year, I would have just figured this creativity thing out and I would have like choreographed something really badass and then moved on to the next thing. And instead, I had more questions at the end of the year than I had started the year with. And so curiosity followed that thread, interviewed them for another year, kept going. And then I just started writing to figure out what it was that I was learning. Because it wasn't matching up with what my expectations were walking into the project. Like I didn't really define creativity when I started the project, which is maybe like ignorance, hubris, a stroke of genius, a little bit of all the things. But I think that all of us were really thinking about creativity as something like art that got put on a stage that other people consumed. And what we were discovering was that, you know, the woman who made up a story about how Brussels sprouts were really alien, little alien planet, or like had come from an alien planet in order to get her son to eat them, like that story that she told was just as creative as anything else. And so I started writing to understand what I was learning. That was, I wrote for a long time, and wound up writing a book about it. All of our stories sort of coalesced into 7 different areas. And one of the women who was a graphic designer at the time, who over the course of the project became a tattoo artist, designed a sigil for each of the 7. So yes, tattoo wise, I'm in the process of getting them all on my body. And I've got, I think, 3.5 out of the 7. And one of them, yes, does have a labyrinth in it. And it was even before I went completely down the rabbit hole on that one.
It was a gateway drug.
It was a gateway drug. It was a gateway drug. And
which one is that? Which one?
It is the very first one. It is desire. So desire is the first sigil because I have to understand what I want and or need. Presence is the next one because I have to become attentive to what it is that I am feeling in the moment. Balance, which is the out of all of the different options around me in that present moment, which one is the one that is going to offer the most fulfillment. Circle, because I don't create in a vacuum. Compassion, because that's the first, last, and everyday lesson. There's a lot of work that we all did for ourselves around what our creative processes are and how we can be more compassionate as we go through them. What sort of stages do we recognize in our creative processes? Spirit is the 6th one, and it is the one that I fought the most. It is the last one to be named, and I have had an uneasy relationship with mystery and with things that are outside of my control. And so this was a very fascinating discussion of getting into religious upbringings, backgrounds of all of those involved in the project, how spirituality manifested in our lives today, how the unknown played a part in that creative process, and integration at the end, which is how do we take the lessons that we have learned, the desires, the journey of going after those desires and integrating them into our lives.
Ooh, beautiful. Now you gave me a nice little taste along each of them, but I want to rabbit hole on them. I would love to go like for desire.
Yeah.
Is there a story? Was there a moment? Was there a performance that made that one and kind of go through for each of these? You can think whether it was an experience, a story, or even just like how you relate to it today. I just want to start to go down on them. So desire, with desire, I just, as soon as you said that, I started to like feel it almost like a salivation. Like what are you salivating for? What are you yearning for? And I think that the more tuned into yourself or your spirit or your soul you can be, then the more clearly that desire can come through and can be articulated and stuff too. And like it's almost like the more you have an appetite. Like, it's, I feel like the way I was raised, desire was a very negative thing, having desires, like, or
True.
being desirable, or yeah, no, like, you don't get to want things, you get to be happy with what you're given, and money is evil, and sex is a sin, and no desire, don't trust your body.
Mhm.
So the fact that it's the first thing in your system that you've developed around creativity, let's unpack that.
It was a bit of a it felt a little edgy for me to choose that word as the first one, and yet at that point in time I was a program manager. I was doing systems integrations for, I don't know, 250 major applications during mergers and acquisitions, and it was like I felt like all of the colors in my life had shrunk down to the red, yellow, green of a project plan. And it was just like I would like dream about it, like I was trying to go across this project plan at night like Frogger, and I just couldn't get to the other side. And you know, that was like during the week, and then the weekends would be full of like glitter and sparkle and music and being in touch with my body and like all of these other colors that I felt like I didn't have words for. And if I can't find the words for what it is that I want and I need, then all I'm going to have room for, all I will have the words for in my life are the wants and the needs of all the people around me that have been able to articulate them. So I spent a lot of my life trying to manifest and make other people's wants and needs possible, figuring out what I want and need. That feels edgy.
Yeah, and you know where I'm going now
Juicy.
is thinking about Abraham Hicks and how a lot of the language in what Abraham Hicks has said is like, follow your desire is such a good thing, like pleasure, what you want, like wanting things, that's not by accident. You want things. That's what I meant by like when your soul can come through, you have more desire, you have more passion because you're incarnate for such a short period of time and there's, life to be lived and stuff like that. And so in this thinking of um the desire and wanting, because a lot of that language with Abraham Hicks is around manifestation. And so I think it's like an interesting line I'm drawing between creativity and manifestation here,
Mm,
right? Because even in the case that you mentioned about the Brussels sprouts, there was a need for, like, this woman needed something to happen. She needed her kid to eat. And so she was able to create a solution or manifest something. And so it's this my will be done kind of thing. And so like as I say that, it totally makes sense then to connect to desire, because it's like my will, my desire, my wants, thus I willed it kind of thing. Like what I desire, if I'm able to even see my desires and acknowledge them, and totally, like you said, I can relate to helping everyone else with their desires and their wants and needs. But ultimately, you're just helping them then with their manifestation. And there's something, you meant we do get to circle, right? Like in your list, like we do get to the point at which where we're seeing that we are both people and we both deserve our free will and we both deserve to be here and have our desires, and not control or be in fear or be in separation, but rather to see the oneness and the unity, but also my desires. Well, it's like Aries and Libra, kind of, right?
mm.
Like that axis, I am, and we are,
And we are.
and we are. Okay, so anything else on desire? Do you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, let's dig into presence. I'll tell you, so at the time I was very much a choreographer. I would choreograph where my breath would happen. I would choreograph like every single moment in a piece would have so much imbued into it. And like the audience might not ever know that, and they didn't have to. That was what I put in the piece for me. Some of the other women who were a part of this did a lot of improvisational styles. Maybe they did an improvisational style where there are physical cues for a movement. And so it's sort of like square dancing in a way, but they're visual cues. And so you can dance as a group with people from all over the world without even speaking the same verbal language. But that's improvisational. And then some like completely improvised and would like improvise to live musicians who were improvising. And that felt like taking the little girl that I had been, who took her little like ballet, tap, jazz, tumbling trio, and like pointing a gun to her head and like pushing her out of this choreography box. And so I decided to do it. And it was really interesting because the first couple of times that I tried to, well, I had to go deal with the fear of like, why would anybody want to watch me make shit up on stage? And you know, my husband said, maybe because you are making shit up on stage, and like not everybody does that. And I'm like, okay. Um, and also, so I dealt with that, and then like I would improvise and I would remember where I began and I remember where I ended, and maybe there would be a couple little Polaroid moments in between, but like the rest of it, I had no memory of it. And then I was like, how can I? There was like this Zen cone that went off as like a dancer who's so present, she's absent. And like,
Wow. Wow. Rabbit hole. Let's go. We can go on that one.
so, and then I started thinking about like, well, like where else in my life am I not present? You know, I'm not present when I'm washing the dishes and I'm like standing on one leg, you know, with like a stork and trying to like end game my way and rush through washing the dishes. And like, how do I put a playlist on and like turn that into some moves as I'm bringing the dishes across? How do I like dance through folding the laundry? How do I get out of the car and not jack up my back? You know, just basic moving through my day as a dancer rather than dance being the thing that like I get up early to practice in my costume and videotape a run through and try not to wake up anybody else in the house and then like stem the tide of shame because, oh my God, what if I put that on stage? So there was just this like, uh, yeah, real gradation that I was working through around, can I be present to how creativity shows up in different places?
Wow. Yes. Okay. There are like 85 things in my mind. I'm going to pick the first one. Um, my sister and I went on this road trip to Phoenix like a week or
Mhm.
two ago, right? And one of the things that we talked about so much was presence and just seeing all the ways in which we are not encouraged to be present at all. Where in fact, we're being distracted constantly, like constant bombardment of things. And it reminded me of this book that my mom had showed us whenever we were younger called The Screw Tape Letters
Oh
by
yeah,
C.S.
C.S.
Lewis.
Lewis.
Yeah, yeah, and it's this, like, senior demon talking to a junior demon about how to tempt humans, and there's this whole chapter on just no matter what, make sure he is not in the present moment. No matter what, just make sure he is either so stuck in the past, stuck
Yeah.
in guilt, stuck in shame, stuck in what could have been, stuck in replaying old scenarios, stuck emotionally, stuck physically, stuck like all everything like in the past, or so worried about the future,
Mhm.
so constantly focused on what could be, what will be, what's going to happen if I do this, is it going to be this, that so focused on either of those places that he's never in the present moment, which is the only place you actually get to live.
Yeah. Now is all you have.
Now is all you have. And so then you started I love that you went into presence talking about this like choreography versus improvisation lens, because I noticed this too, and it's something that I think about a lot because I think of ecstatic dance and like that whole world of ecstatic dance, and I love it and it's fun. And
Yeah.
also I teach choreography,
Mhm.
and also I love to, and I they both really do have their place. Like with choreography, I think of it as like a it's almost like the labyrinth. Like you're laying out a labyrinth in the sand. You're laying out a path for you to then go be present in. So it's like
Yes.
you get to have that sense of like the spirit has taken over you and you're lost in the moment, but you're doing it through this like pathway. that you've created that's already been predetermined and you're getting to experience in a present moment. That's just one of the ways that I think of choreography
Yeah,
sometimes.
it's beautiful. And the reason why I love it so much is because I think, you and I have been talking about like acting, and it's almost like the actor who knows their lines so well that it becomes as a genuine surprise when they when they come forward, right? It's the knowing something so intimately that it becomes just this energy just up on top of it. Like it looks effortless. And one of the women, when she choreographed her aerial pieces, she would leave giant chunks in between the emotional moments to allow both herself and the audience to recover. And she talked about like wiping the energy up off of her face and extending it directly out into the crowd, and like leaving these pauses to happen. And like I feel like I have gotten more skillful about choreographing my own life so that I find the optimum flow between when I know that I can, like, I know this so well, I have all of the things that I need to take that energy and extend it out to others, right? Like that's, it allows me
Yes.
to be present, and I'm choreographing those pauses into my life so that I can have that rebound effect and feel the feelings and come out the other side.
Right, because as a performer, you are there too. You know, like it's their experience. But then I saw Billie Eilish in the fall and she got on stage and was like, I was almost too sick to do this show, but I'm really glad I came through. And I said to my sister, I was like, wow, that's crazy. I didn't even think that it was an option for her to not be here. Like I was gonna see Billie Eilish tonight, like that. But then you forget that they're just another human who
Yeah,
can get sick. You know what I mean? Like that, yeah. And so as a they're also a performer who is feeling that there's like teach learning and learn teaching, you know, like you're sharing with the audience something and then they're sharing something with you where you're learning and they're learning and you're teaching and they're teaching, and like it's that bi-directional kind of thing in that way. I actually I in this conversation with my sister on that trip to Phoenix, I mentioned an acting book in which it talked about how you do all of the memorization, you do all of the blocking, you have your makeup, you have your outfit, you know what the lighting cues are going to be so that you can get on stage in front of an audience and it all disappear.
yeah, exactly.
And you become that clear present channel who is, you know, that in the 90 minutes something
Mhm.
is going to be gained by the audience or, you know, whatever it is, but you're not having to think about that part. You're just there telling the story and being in it and having reactions that are real to whatever the physical experience of that character would be in that situation. So another thing on this before we move into the next one, another one of the little threads that my mind went off on was colonization and thinking about choreography in that way that you talked about it, like as if like there's like a baby just dances. You know what I mean? No one has to teach a
Yeah,
baby how to dance. No one has to teach a baby how to dance. All of these tradition, like to say that dance is healing is not like modern science. You know what I mean? Like they've been knowing this for a long, long, long time. And so whenever we think of dance as like it's restricted for studios, it's restricted for arabesques and being on your tippy toes and like you said the ballet tumbling, you know what I mean, only once I reach a certain level of physical precision or number of performances or whatever, then I get to call myself a dancer,
yeah,
versus you being like from Nepal and just being like, oh yeah, we all dance all the time and sing all the time. Like we dance and sing. That's what we do whenever we are having, you know, like I have just made some friends from Nepal and they were here for Thanksgiving and they were like, what, all we do is sit and eat. All you do in America is sit and eat. Where's the gifts? Where's the music? Where's the dancing? Where's the, you know, all of this, like, where's the singing? Where's the, you just get together and you eat, which is like good, you know, like that's part of their tradition and stuff too. But it's like all of this other stuff because it's been, again, I just, the word that comes to my mind is colonization of like, nope, you're being sucked away from what is your natural inherent process.
yeah.
I mean, I feel like the way that you were approaching choreography, or like through your story, would you say that that's how it feels like a confined way in that way?
Well, you're getting into a lot of the topics that we discussed around circle and around the communities
Mm.
that we surround ourselves with, who we choose to learn from, the idea of lineage, the idea of cultural backdrops, learning dance and working with music, because I began singing for dancers in Arabic and Turkish and Greek, because the live music, it makes the dancing so much so better. It's so great. Um
100%.
and also, like, it was probably a decade of me doing this dance before I started really getting into the tradition of the music, and like learning about a song Lamabada and then creating a playlist of like 80 different versions of Lamabada, or like listening to Kulthum from Egypt, like jazz improvised this huge um, song in like lots of different maqams, because in Arabic music, scale is called a maqam, and each one has an emotional component to it. So if someone is modulating, like pop song, you're like, oh, key change, it's the same thing, except there's like way more of them and they have like specific details. But learning the background of that enriched my understanding of the movement and everything beyond it. And we had to really think about the cultural context of what we were learning, and like, how do you do a fusion that is informed, because look, to consider something static that it never changes is not the thing. And also there's a respect for what has come before. And that circles back to like the concept of balance, of like, how do you find the appropriate balance of those different elements? Um,
Yes, circles back, which is funny because circle is
Circles
also
back.
okay.
I,
So
I
wait.
wore the necklace for circle today, by the way. So here is one of the sigils.
Oh, I love it. How'd you get that made?
So this was one of the sigils that TJ designed, and it's probably the next one that I will get done. And it has a little peacock feather for each of us in the group. And so I printed it out and made this little pendant, and then strung it with some beads.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Brilliant. Okay, what was three balance?
Three is balance.
Okay, well, let's get going on balance then, and then we can circle back to circle.
Circle back to circle. I was like, it's
Yeah.
hard. It's circle is I would like coming up with an order of what to do these things in was really challenging.
Right, right. Well, and
Um,
here's a pro tip for the audience, something that I learned from Christy, a word called flucture, which
yes.
is flow and structure. And that's actually how we like plan this. I was like, we're gonna like talk about this, and this. That's the flucture. And she was like, great. So there's a little one for your pocket, guys. A nice little takeaway whenever you need some flucture, whenever you need flow, you need to be able to flow, and structure, which actually is also a great way to wrap up presence. Because I feel like that was kind of what we were talking about between like choreography, like something being
Mhm.
choreographed is kind of like the structure, but then you're going to flow through it.
Right.
So, and that, yeah, I can see how that would, because you got the two of these, so you need balance. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, thinking about like desire, right? The Tao Te Ching says, from the one comes the two, from the two comes the three, and from the three come the 10,000 things, right? So from desire, I had to become present to what I am feeling in the moment in order to really like balance that like future look with like where I have been and where I am now. And so balance is like figuring out the right path between the many poles. And then circle, all of a sudden you've got a group of things sitting around, and now I'm in community and I've got to figure. And it was also interesting, this is like a side note on like the order of things. I almost put compassion before circle, and then I realized I couldn't, because I find myself in community and I find myself fucking up in community, uh, and not being compassionate to myself. And so I made a deliberate choice to put compassion afterwards. Um,
mm,
no, on balance, like when we first started talking about balance, there was that like whole work life dance balance and we had like different bubbles for all of the different things. And there was a lot of angst because we weren't spending enough time in the bubble that we really wanted to be in. And um, I have to say, the most meaningful story out of that for me came from a woman named Baraka. And it's really where a lot of the 7 touchstones that I had came from, is because she does a lot of she's a therapist and does offers a lot of holding space for other humans. And she said, what if you had these 7 things, and instead of having a to-do list, what if you drew them like they were overlapping circles, like the seed of life? And she said, instead of a to-do list, what if you just like gave an offering every day to work in the world, and then you gave another offering to the body temple, and you gave another offering to, and so she had her 7. And like looking at this like seed of life print that she would put in a little notebook, and she would sort of fill it out with her offerings for each day. And thinking about things as an altar instead of a to-do list, I was like, I feel like that's something I can get behind. And the overlap, because the center one was creativity and self and source, and so it was like every single one of these areas had an overlap with creativity, and the cross pollination between those is really enriched my understanding of balance.
Yeah, because there's something about it. It makes me think of a druid saying, perfect balance is perfect stagnation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Balance, you have to have opposites. You have to have less here and more here or whatever. If you're finding balance, it's this active thing. It's not this like stagnant place, this point that you get to, and you're like, good, I did balance.
I did it. I did it today, and tomorrow balance is going to be completely different.
100%, because the things that you're balancing are going to be different. Your own capacity, how well you slept, is going to be, you know what I mean, its own little, have its own weight or whatever. If you think of
Mm-hmm.
scales, like a bunch of scales, right? Like that's going to have its own weight. Yeah, what's on your to-do list, or the actions that you should be taking, the things that other people need of you, that kind of thing, which I could see us then getting into circle, right? Because you're going from balance, it's not just you deciding what needs to happen, and that's like that, yeah, desire, presence, balance, now circle. So let's go into circle. Well, back into circle again.
Backing into circle.
Backing into circle.
So circle is something that is a big focus for me right now. I have been co-facilitating and sharing space with others for this Atlas of the Heart project, and we have also been holding wider circles where we invite others to come circle with us and trying to share this practice. So we use Native American council share techniques to read aloud a set of guidelines. There's an opening and closing grounding for it. And then there's often a focus. It's a topic that we want to get into. And then there could be a couple of questions, and people take turns sharing their thoughts on those topics. And for me, to be able to really practice my listening skills, and also to have space held for me to be raw and unformed and talking things through, and to have that held respectfully and with like in confidence, it is so incredible, because I'm able to witness the differences in our similarities and the similarities in our differences, and it enriches my understanding of my own words, because someone will say something and I go, those are the words, that is exactly my experience. And then somebody could say something and I'm like, nope, not feeling it. However, I'm not feeling that because I now know this other thing to be true. And so sitting in circle for me really helps me find what I have in common and just articulate my own needs. And so that is like, out of all of the things that I have going on in my life, I have made a commitment to circling and to seeking out what I can find in common with others. I don't even know if I've shared this with you, but I've decided to become a speaker for Better Ballot Initiative to raise awareness of ranked choice voting.
No, you didn't tell me, but go girl.
Because in the craziness of whatever this world is right now, I think that a lot of the challenge is that there is so much ink spilled, airtime spilled on two opposite feelings, two opposite parties, that that antagonistic way of approaching things makes for a very toxic dialogue. And ranked choice voting is a upgrade to the way that we vote today. Instead of going in and saying, I vote for this one candidate, like if there's four, you rank them in order of your preference. It's my first choice, my second choice, my third choice, my fourth choice. So if nobody gets 50% at the beginning, then the candidate who got the least amount of votes is dropped from the list, and whoever voted for that person as their first choice now gets their second choice. It eliminates the costs of runoffs, and it encourages more civil campaigning, because usually people can't get enough to get 50% or, a majority of the vote. And so they're like, you know what, if you don't vote for me as first choice, vote for me as second choice, because me and this other person, we're pretty similar. And it just really changes that whole dynamic of things. So yeah, I just went through my first round of speaker training, but that kind of goes along with circle for me, of how can I find community. And even with people who are on the opposite side of the political spectrum for me, if we really dig into it on a lot of issues, we are a lot closer than the media would have us believe.
Oh, yeah, and already seeing here, like, that balance to circle,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? 3
it's
to 4,
balance to
like, you're
circle. Hmm.
yeah, like, how that because also with balance, like, whenever you've got 2, once you add the element of time, like, if you draw a circle, once you add the element of time, you have a spiral, right? And that's like you're
Hmm.
balancing the highs and the lows, like the opposites and all of that. And so it has this spiral feeling versus a duality sort of feeling, which is really interesting. And with circle, what did you find? Because I loved hearing about your experience now. How did you get to circle back then? Like, what was dance thought of as your circle, that kind of thing?
So a lot of these circling techniques, there was there were two dancers, and they would start every practice with the two of them by circling.
Mm.
And so they brought it into the group, and it was just really transformative. There was one of my dance mentors, Donna Mejia. She was teaching dance at the University of Boulder at the time, and she brought a lot of books into our collective. Larry Lavender's Dancers Talking Dance has a framework called Order, which talks about how you observe and then how you reflect. And it like works your way through a critique. So we talked about like criticism versus critique, and how it's valuable to get another viewpoint, but like how do you include the perspectives of both the creator and the audience, and then like evaluate choices. Maybe I wanted this piece to have a somber feeling, but a move came across as whimsical to my audience. So that's evaluative. And how might I change this movement in order to get across the mood that I was wanting to get across with the piece? So we worked through some things, some like dance related methods of kind of having creative conversations that were really useful. I'm trying to think. I think the other book that was really instrumental to me at the time was, um, gosh, I think it was Douglas and Sheila Heen, um, on feedback. And it was like, you know what? You could just be walking around this world and somebody's going to give you feedback, whether you want it or not. And so, like, how do you become more skillful at receiving feedback? And like, it was very interesting. I had an experience where I did a very, I think I shared this video with you. I did a piece that was to a funk cover of Rage Against the Machine.
Yes, you did. Yeah,
And
good.
so it was a very powerful piece. And I had someone come up to me after performing that, and he told me that I made him feel uncomfortable. And so like everyone else had been like pumping their fists, and I was like starting to feel the love of like everybody, the empowerment of like getting all up into this movement. And then uh it sort of burst my bubble a little bit when it first happened. But I'll tell you, at least in this moment, because I was able to like step back a little bit and go, that's a very interesting perception that you've had. So like what led you to this feeling? And he was open about going into it and thought that some of it had come from his Southern religious upbringing, and now he's not used to seeing a woman expressing raw power and sexuality on stage. And like, and so it became this like give and take. And in the end he thanked me for showing him that a woman could embody a lot more on stage. So it wound up being a really positive conversation. And if I hadn't have been in the, if I hadn't have had the tools, or been in the frame of mind so that I could like step back and be present while he sort of fumbled forward. Donna Mejia talks about fumbling forward, where it's like, I don't have the words and I'm afraid I might offend you. If you just allow me to fumble forward, I'm gonna like, don't judge me, don't be so harsh on me, because my intent is not to offend. My intent is to figure things out. And I think both of us walked away from that conversation learning something powerful.
Yes. And what a way to wrap up, at least for right now, us talking about circle,
Yeah.
because there's the give and take, the give and receive. And like you said, having the tools, but also allowing them their opinion. My also, and this, I don't know if this led to me picking curiosity, but last
Ooh,
year, my whole vision board was just the photo of the dude being like, yeah, well, that's just like your
your
opinion,
opinion,
man.
man.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's, hey, oh my gosh, is that a pillow?
Yeah.
With the dude, that's so good. Well, perfect. I'm so glad you knew to bring that.
No, it lives on the couch.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so take me from circle to
Passion.
compassion. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so compassion means suffering alongside. And there is a bit of a tension between like compassion as a term of like, how do you show compassion to others? How it really manifested for me and the others in this book was self-compassion, because I was very good at being forgiving and understanding of others. And I was not very good at, people, what is it? The golden rule: treat others as you would treat yourself. And I was like, man, if I treated other people like I treated myself, I would have no friends.
Ooh. Ooh, and this takes me back to desire as well, and the way that you were
Yeah.
relating to that, right? And what does everyone else desire? And then
Mhm.
all the way to how can I be compassionate for everyone else? Because that's really martyrdom.
Mhm.
And like, I think that maybe for some people's story, that's a necessary, part or whatever they've decided that. But I don't think for a lot of people, their soul actually meant to choose that, or they're putting themselves, like to your point, they're not being a friend to themselves,
Yeah.
that they would be to another person. And that's not the world inflict. There are systems of oppression and stuff, in the world, and that's like very different than just like you not being nice enough to yourself. You can control that. You can control that part. And so compassion, but it's also interesting coming again from circle and the way we wrapped it up, because in that story you were having compassion for yourself and for him. You were like, it feels like you were able to not just take on what he said because you were compassionate for him fumbling forward.
Yeah. It was the way in which he approached me for sure. And yeah, also having compassion, because I had been a little nervous about putting that on stage. It was very different from anything that I had done to date or ever since. But it felt really powerful. I went back and watched it recently and I was like, wow, I like that piece a lot better now than I did even when I was working on it. Because
Why? So why?
Because I have a lot more compassion for myself, because I
Mhm.
would have watched it back in the day and gone, you did not nail that moment. You got way too close to the audience here. Like, you messed up on this and you were going to hit these 3 points and you wound up only hitting the two. And I'm like, nobody fucking knew that. Like, nobody had any idea. Uh, so yeah, compassion.
No, I completely relate to that. There are things or photos that I look back on and I'm like, I thought I looked so bad in that or whatever. And you look at it later and you're like, what? Why was I just, yeah, not being nice to myself?
Yeah. You said in your fluxure for this meeting that talking about creativity is healing was something you really wanted to touch on. And I will say that compassion is really where that connection got made. Because
Mm.
what I discovered across the stories, and I wound up tracing the journeys of these different women around, like through childhood, through adolescence, through becoming a woman, through aging, and like looking at the different things that the traumas and the griefs and things that they had dealt with, and then how they turned that around and put it on stage, or turned it around into I use the word cosmic context. And like TJ, as the tattooist, right, her whole job right now is to, we talked about how we're always dancing on scar tissue, and she takes these really oftentimes painful moments in people's lives, or really beautiful moments in people's lives, and then causes them pain in order to like create this create a piece of art. And I noticed that, women created pieces around deaths of loved ones. One woman choreographed something around the dabda, the stages of grief.
Mm.
And uh, we talked about like injuries that we'd had that forced us to completely change the way we had to approach the art form, and how we could find creativity in movement, even if we couldn't roll around on the floor, because that was the way we had always, that had been our style of dance. Um, and just that compassion of being able to use one of the biggest gifts that we have, which is creativity, and using it in a way to heal us beyond our brokenness.
And getting to share that then with an audience if that's, chosen, and getting to heal them in those ways as well, because there's something it's catharsis. Like, that's something that I had a theater teacher talk about a lot, was that like good theater is like an inoculation. Like, it's this like exposing you to
Mm.
something, and so that you can walk away, and if you're ever in that situation, you like kind of have tools for how you're going to approach that thing because you saw someone process it raw and vulnerable.
Yeah, there are two dancers, Nala and Hillary, and they had done this piece called Insanity. They were the ones that started their practice by circling before they would get into rehearsals together. And in this piece, in Insanity, it was very industrial. They like pulled off their clothes at one point, like pulled a sleeve off or whatever, and had like anger or contempt written in paint on their bodies, and went mad and had people come out as orderlies and pick them up and physically carry them off stage. And then later, they redid that piece using some of the basic blocks and called it Awake My Soul. And they danced to a Mumford and Son song. And they also had these words. And at one point in time, they, like one of them rips her sleeve off to reveal anger, and the other one rips her belly aside to reveal contempt. And those are the demons that they both had. And instead of letting those demons go crazy, letting them go crazy and have to be locked away, they reached out and touched each other. And just the being able to witness someone's demons, and the fact that none of us are perfect, we all fuck up and have to fumble forward. And how do we create the space where we can still shine? They ended the piece by like, they took the dark gray shirts on, and they had these like sparkly tops on, and they had veil poi with sparkles, and they're just like, it was, and then the whole rest of the festival, I mean, I was bawling in the front row, but people came up to them and said, like, my demon is this. I recognize myself in this. And like, that's compassion and show it, but that putting compassion on stage and then opening the dialogue up so that we could all
Right.
participate in it.
Or even to say it another way, putting their healing on stage, right? Because that's what we were relating it to, putting their
Yeah.
healing on stage and allowing other people some of that medicine. It's like
Yeah.
giving them a little, pill or something off of it because they're getting to like experience that bit. And what I love about that is I feel like it takes us into spirit.
It does.
Because especially, I mean, dancing around in glittery tops, there's a lot of spirit if you think of it in the like cheerleading sense, but obviously spirit is a word with many a connotation. So how do you mean it and how does it show up here?
Well, I some of the stories that I'm very privileged to share in these writings are around the fact that I have had the opportunity to learn from women with deep spiritual backgrounds in things like trance healing, in sound healing, um, and to experience that. And I don't have a lot of words for for
Right,
what that's like, right?
right.
One woman that I Leah Lee and Amel Tafsut are two of the women that I studied under. I actually went to Morocco with Amel and spent a month or so traveling around with her. And like some of the, you just get together with a group of people, you go over to somebody's house, you have some tea, you kick off your shoes, you put on some trance music, and then you just throw the hair around and toss it until all of the blood and everything is moving. And you're talking about ecstatic dance earlier, right? Like it's moving so much of the fluids of the body around to where there's just a deeper connection. I remember whirling in the Sufi tradition and spinning, and there was dark in the room except for like a lamp that had like a shade or like a scarf draped over it in the corner. And I'm staring at the palm of one hand to stave off the dizzies. And I'm spinning dark and light and dark and light until it felt like my feet were the only thing keeping the world moving.
Mm.
And just that ability to touch into the unknown. I captured a lot of stories about supernatural experiences that the women had in their personal lives, but as well as in the creation of artwork that they did, and certainly experienced a lot of these moments myself.
This is the mystical movement show, right? And mystical
Yeah.
has its root word in mystery.
Yeah.
Like it is all about how these are mysteries. As soon as you think you're enlightened, you're starting over, As soon as you think you've got it, there's a new level to it. It goes back to the spiral, right? That 1, 2, 3 that we were talking about. Once you're balancing and then into
Hmm.
that. And so with spirit, I yeah, because well, I don't know. Do you think that there's a difference between soul and spirit? Because I think it could totally be a semantic thing. Like,
I think that, I mean, my answer today is probably going to shift from like how I might answer that on another day. In the mood I am in the moment that I'm in, soul feels like maybe more of my uh like the personal through line of like what this soul is capable of bringing into the world, and that involves a lot of connecting into spirit, into a bit greater context. So in another frame of mind, I would say that like the soul of who I am and the spirit of the world are exactly one and the same.
right. No, I totally feel you. And that's why we're talking about mysteries. And we get to call them mysteries and acknowledge that what we're feeling today is going to be different. It takes us back to Alice in Wonderland, right?
Yeah.
I said something this morning, but I was a different person then, and that
Yes.
whole side to things. Okay, so final one. Let's go into number 7.
Integration.
Integration.
And that is bringing it all together. And I had been working on this project for over a decade. And then my dad got really catastrophically ill. Um, and I couldn't move. for a long time. Couldn't dance. I couldn't do yoga. I couldn't write. I had, I felt like I had no connection to anything that brought me joy because everything had just collapsed down to this small lens. And I think when I realized that this was really going to be a marathon and not a sprint, and I started doing things like, leaving a hot water kettle at his hospital room so that I could make tea and make a little ramekin in the ICU with some hot water and put some drops of lavender in a lemmy, which was one of the smells that his mother wore. Or like one of the ways that I helped like try to call him back to me. And just the tiny little creative things like coming home and walking around my front yard before I could go inside in the mornings after I'd been up all night with him. I think what I discovered during this period of time were just how many little tools that I had gathered that I managed to use in different ways. I activated every single thing from the desire of like all of his frillion indicators down one side and then like my list on the other side, like eat something, drink a glass of water, brush my teeth, sleep at hours. And then being present to like any moment that he might be awake or be spending time with me. To balance the needs as best I could and take time off from work so that I could be present for what my family needed. I drew upon my circle. I drew upon compassion. I had to let go into the mystery of spirit in these cases. And just, I chose little rocks, touchstones for each one of the 7. And, I would just pick them up as I try to brush my teeth and think, how did I use this every day? I use brushing my teeth a lot because I don't like brushing my teeth, so I'm not very good at it. But it's like, how can I integrate these things more deeply across the rest of my life? And what I have found is that if I follow that chain, if I keep following the 7 places where I would like to place energy, really amazing things happen. I find a labyrinth in Hawaii that needs a caretaker. And now, integrating that into my life, right? So it is a breath by breath practice. And it is that, how do we were talking about movement, like choreography earlier, and the like knowing something so well that it just becomes a part of the breath, it becomes a part of the movement. And how do my impulses to being creative become so deeply integrated that they are just a part of the way that I breathe?
Yes. And what I think of so much with creativity is like just our choice, being able to make a choice at any given moment is a creative act, because you could choose one thing or you could choose another thing, and you're creating something different with whatever that choice that you're making is. And so it makes me think of also what we were talking about with balance, how like perfect balance is perfect stagnation. The integration is the reps almost, right? Where you're getting deeper and deeper, because here you are, like you said, 2011 was when it started, right? So over a decade of and it won't stop. The integration won't stop. Like there will always be ways to dive deeper into these things, especially mystery. At the very least, mystery will always just stay mystery and be a mystery.
Yeah, you're like bringing up stagnation. I'm working on sequencing a yin yoga flow because I'm getting a 50-hour yin yoga certification right now, and I'm sequencing a yoga flow to go with a labyrinth that I'm building at a burn next month.
Oh yeah, you're the one that you have a grant for?
Yes, I got an art grant to build a temporary labyrinth installation out of solar LEDs, and it is for the emotion of resignation. It's called Resign to Rise. And the pathway takes you into the top of a well. It sucks you down into the spiral at the bottom of the well. And if you keep going and don't let yourself stagnate at the bottom, you can work your way up the side and through the body and the wings of a phoenix. And so the yoga flow will start on the
Oh.
ground and then work up to standing at the end. But was just right before I joined this call working on like a twist movement to like keep that stagnation out of the belly before like coming up into an eagle arms to like start waking up the back of the wings.
Oh, I love it. And I love also you saying this makes me think of the way a yoga flow
Yeah.
is a kind of choreography. Like again, this pathway, you're making the physical labyrinth that they get to walk and have as a walking meditation, but then also the yoga flow, the postures that they get to have a pathway through for further exploring that emotion as well. That's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, I've got to record a like myself delivering a yin yoga class to pass the certification. So I'm sort of combining the two things. But I'm going to offer the recording at Emergence at the Burn on Sunday, the last day of it, and like use that as to like then help break the lights down at the end of it. Because I know like some of the beautiful times that I had with you out on the beach making labyrinths, because we'd be working on like trust and the components and everything up underneath it, and then we just start talking over the edges of a line about like how the particular concept was striking us at the moment. That playlist that you made for curiosity and we were dancing around.
Oh, you saying that makes me think also like it's anchors, and this feels like part of integration,
Mm.
because every time throughout the rest of the year that I said to myself curiouser and curiouser, I had a different relationship with those words. I was taken physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally to a different place because I had walked that labyrinth and been so intentional and ritualistic and present and had a desire for that one and found balance in it, and been compassionate, all had that like such a creative experience in that moment. Then I can, or even just listen to a playlist, and it takes me to this place that it is so different than another song that I haven't. It's like association memory kind of thing, right? To say curiouser and curiouser. Obviously, someone could have a relationship with that because of like Alice in Wonderland, but it shifts then whenever you've done
Mhm.
something like this, because then I can say that to myself. Because there were plenty of times in the last year that I said, you wanted to flip out or you wanted to do whatever, and I would just go curiouser and curiouser, and it was so empowering. It's like it was like something that I could say to take my power back to me rather than being lost in fear or like a doom spiral or like a whatever. I could say curiouser and curiouser, and it transmuted it into something and like helped me even find it was like a lens, like putting on miracle goggles kind of thing. You can like put on this thing that you have a relationship to. And so I'm excited for everyone at Emergence to get to have this experience, and then they'll have this flow. And who knows, they're going to be doing yoga in a class sometime, and they're going to do a pose or maybe a little bit of that sequence or whatever it is, and they're going to be brought that back to that experience and like able to see have that. So we're starting to get into just what I'd love to wrap up with of like, where can people find you? What's next? Anything else that you want to share?
Yeah. Well, so my website is enrichment-project.com, and I have been doing some blogging out there. I am not very great at social media. I attribute that to like over a decade now in cybersecurity, and I just know too much. If it's free, you are the product. So I guess just uh yeah, so I don't spend as much time out there, but I am like noodling around with a newsletter there. I think one of the biggest journeys that I am on at the moment is my husband and I have just closed on an acre of land on the big island of Hawaii. I grew up on Oahu, and we've always talked about eventually moving toward the beach. And last January, I found someone who was looking for a caretaker of a labyrinth just 30 minutes south of Hilo called Avapuhi. And so we're now embarking on a, decade plus journey of building out there and retiring. And so like there's a lot of labyrinth journeys. As a part of that, I may teach my yoga class for World Labyrinth Day the first weekend of May at Avapuhi, because I'll be on the Big Island in May. And then a lot of the other things that are out there are around some of the temporary installations that I do, like the one at Emergence. And I just got a commission for my first permanent labyrinth that we're going to be breaking ground on the end of May outside of Chattanooga at a facility that offers some behavioral therapy techniques in the shape of a turtle. So very excited about this one.
Yes. And if someone were to want to inquire about a labyrinth, could they do that on enrichment-project.com?
Yeah, they sure can. There's links to learn more about joining a circle if you want to. I do shamanic tarot work. So I have a couple of clients who will come to me every year to work through whatever life has in store for them. So a lot of my offerings are there. That's probably the best place to find me.
Perfect. Well, I have loved this conversation. I love you so much. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you for the gift of this that you're putting out into the world with the Mystical Movement show, Natalie.